Let's talk.
John Brown.
I have been looking forward to this particular interview since it landed on my desk a couple of weeks ago. It's the memoir of iconic cars and racing adventures. The 1960s was a golden age of European motorsports. Two countries in particular led to the saloon car field. Britain with the Mini and Italy with the Cinquecento, the Fiat. As the rivalry was ignited by the creation of the Mini Cooper and the Fiat Abarth, there was a fervent need for tuning and quote-unquote go faster component companies. And from this, Radbourne Racing was born. I am delighted to say that one of the trailblazers, one of the men who put the furry into dice, I suppose, perhaps, but was certainly one of the men who was behind all of it, was my next guest, who is Lincoln Small. Lincoln, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you, John.
Good to have you with us. I was only pulling your leg, of course, with furry dice, but the 60s, of course, is a fabulous time to be around, full stop. But if you like your cars and if you like getting into motorsport, then you could argue that there wasn't a better time, because we've been through the 50s, with the Jags and the Aston Martins, and suddenly it became the Mini and the Fiats and maybe even a Ford Anglia or two made that club racing could take off in a big way.
Very true. There weren't that many cars that were competitive. Those that were competitive tended to be Mini Coopers, Fiat Abarths, and later on, Hillman Imps.
Yes, all right. Spoiler, that's a private joke because my father was very involved with the Hillman Imps back in the day. But for those, because people now will go and they'll buy, they'll buy a Mini Cooper and it'll be the size of a small van. But back in the day, the word's not Mini, is it? The word is Cooper, because if you know you're racing, that's more important than the Mini on the front. Explain, please, Lincoln.
Well, the Mini started almost a revolution because it was the first car in England anyway.
Yeah.
It was the first car really that young guys could buy and have fun with. And they started to tune them and get them to go quicker, to handle better. And they became a cult car. Across the channel, there was a Fiat Abarth, which was also a cult car, particularly in Italy.
Yeah.
And in Italy, which was where Abarth came from, he didn't, Carlo Abarth, he came from Austria. But all the main racing series at the time, the international ones in particular, were all based around the cars such as the Minis, such as the Coopers. And then along came other ones later. But it was a fervent time. It was fantastic. People did actually go out and buy cars and race them. They used to, in fact, drive them to the circuits. And when they got there, they went racing.
Yep.
And then at the end of the race, they'd drive home again.
Yep.
Some of them, those that hit trees on the way obviously didn't, but it was great fun.
My father once drove all the way down from Staffordshire to Brands Hatch to race. I think it was the Sunbeam, and he forgot to put. He was on the grid. And he forgot to put the tape on the headlights.
On the headlights.
Yeah.
Yes.
And got thrown off and told not to come back. And he'd driven all the way down. Sort of from there. So he was most upset about that. He still talks about it today.
Well, I think everybody has bloomers and blunders and this, and so I sympathise with you down with it. What happened to me on my first race is I started with the handbrake on.
Oh well,
that was useful.
So what were you in, Lincoln, and how did your journey into motorsport begin then?
Well, it started really. I was living in Italy. I was at college, and I'd seen all these little Fiats running around. I didn't have a car at the time. I did have a driving license, and that was it.
Right.
I was 17, 18, and these little Fiats that were running around with open exhausts were mesmerizing. Anyway, I decided this was time to put my toes in the water and see about getting a car. And I came back to England, and one thing led to another. With a bit of help from people, family, etc., I actually bought a Fiat 600. The trouble was, the Fiat 600, great little car that it was not quick.
Right.
It was slow. So now I had to find a way of making it quick. I looked around. I couldn't really find anybody that was particular. Well, that's not true. There was one who was a Lotus engineer, Woodland Street, and he helped me tune the car, so to speak, if you like. But I needed somebody who knew the way around Fiat Abarths, and I found two guys I met by chance. I was working in photographic shops in town at the time. I was getting on a train in South Ken to Piccadilly, and one day and parked the car, of course, as you could then, outside the station. And when I came back in the evening, there was a little note on the windscreen of the car which said, "We tune Fiats." And there was a name, John and Jeff Anstead. There was a telephone number, and I phoned them up. And they said, "That's exactly what we do." And I said, "That's exactly what I want. Let's meet," which we did. We got on like a house on fire. They were working with it from a small shed in the back of their mother's house. It was a little council house in Brentford.
Right.
And Brentford stroke Ealing was on the borders.
Right.
and we got on so well. And of course, the next thing is they're tuning my little Fiat 600. And I played an integral part in this because I put all the stickers and adhesives on it.
That's the important bit.
So all the checkered tape and everything else was down to me.
What was, I mean, is it the road holding then? Because like the Mini is, drive it, I had a Mini 1275 GT, but GT, and it sticks to the road until it doesn't, basically. And when it doesn't, know about it. Is it the same with the Abarth? Yes,
it's the complete opposite, of course, if you like, in configuration, because the Mini was a front-wheel drive car, and the little Fiat Abarth was a rear drive.
Yeah.
And so, you had to adapt if you were racing one to another, or if you were weaned on one. You had to know how and when it was going to break loose. And they did break loose.
Yeah.
If you just went that little bit, if you overstepped the mark.
With no warning.
No. They would talk to you. They would tell you, "Come on now."
So when you tuned it and you took it out for the first time for that breakdown, obviously a highly technologically advanced test track somewhere, like the front, like the Westway or something. I mean, what was your immediate reaction when you?
Well, you're not far away when you said the Westway, because actually it was next to the Great West Road.
Well, there you go then.
Absolutely on there. It was. Look, in fairness, it's a gradual build up. You change components on the car.
Yeah.
But you do that, you start off by changing an exhaust system, for example, and you put a sports exhaust system on the car. Yeah. And then you change the carburetor, and then you change the valve springs, camshaft, and you go through this. But not everybody did it all at once. In fact, very few people did, because it's an expensive operation. So, one component at a time.
Yeah.
And we would test it. We would test it on the Great West Road. And the A40.
So, I mean, did you
A4, not A4?
Yeah,
sorry,
exactly. A4. So, last one back from Newbury buys the ice creams. So, where were you racing it then? What was because are we talking sort of, because when you say sort of touring cars and all, saloon cars in the city, you think about gaggles of minis and the whole thing,
right?
And also, I mean, was a certain Mr. Clark around in the Cortina, or is that
yes, absolutely,
wow,
Crystal Palace,
absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Crystal Palace was a great circuit in actual fact.
Yeah.
It didn't last very long, unfortunately, because of safeties and one thing and another, the safety queries, reactions. We were racing. We started. I mean, the first thing that happened was that I immediately took a back seat in racing, because John and Jeff Anstead were extremely good racing drivers.
Right.
Okay. And that was while they were going off racing, somebody had to be there minding the store, if you like. So
Right.
That was my job. That was my job. The racing took part at every single circuit in England that you can imagine or think of, not imagine, but think of. And so where we all lived, which was in West London, it was very useful because that was an hour and a half from every circuit. Yeah. So we could go to Silverstone, Thruxton, Donington Park, etc., etc. And then, toes in the water, we ventured abroad and started and raced there.
Now, racing in Europe in the 60s, as the British invasion, because, I mean, you follow sort of the Formula 3 crowd as well and all going there. And you're all together and you're all nicking petrol from each other. And as opposed to today's highfalutin kind of world of, we have to speak to my PR girl. I mean, it really is a travelling circus with all the freaks that you could imagine and the clowns and the jinx as well, Lincoln.
Yes, absolutely. The paddock was a mixed bunch. I mean, in the paddock, you'd find everything from the Minis and the little Fiat Abarth that we had to Ferrari 250 GTOs racing. So, I mean, and we're racing in the same meeting. You can't really imagine that happening today. You can't imagine because in those days, it was club racing. Yeah. It was known as club racing. It was called club racing. Of course, there was international major races as well, but they were few and far between. The club racing cars, when you mentioned Jim Clark, for example, the marvelous thing was that Jim Clark would be racing Formula One Lotus. And in the same meeting, he'd be racing a Lotus Cortina.
Yeah.
The same thing went for everybody. So cars were raced in probably 4 or 5, 6 races per day.
Yeah.
So when you've got 6 races of qualifying, 6 races of racing, there you go for the day. And only one set of drivers.
Yeah.
Because it was the same drivers very often.
And it's a full dose of. Whereabouts were you racing in the Europe? So I'm presuming you're doing what, Reims, Clermont-Ferrand, Monterey. I mean, what let's try to get to where are you doing?
Well, the 2 major ones that we were racing was Spa.
Oh, old Spa. That's the old Spa, by the way, listeners. It's not the. Yes. It's not. That's the Master Kink. No. So you are in Abarth and doing the Master Kink as a Ferrari 520 bread van comes up behind you. What's the immediate reaction amongst the team, Lincoln?
Abject fear. No. The worst of the lot was the Nürburgring.
Yeah.
That was the hardest. That was really the toughest. All I can say to you was that the Brits made the crossing of the Channel. It was something they had to do.
Yeah.
We had to do, should I say?
So about Radbourne Racing, because the book is called Abarth, Radbourne Racing. And by the way, where does the scorpion symbol come from? Was that?
That's Abarth.
It's himself, is it?
Because, well, he started it. I mean, it's slight conjecture here, but the one to follow, the answer to follow to illustrate it was that he built and raced rear-engine cars.
Yeah.
So the sting of the scorpion is in the tail. Okay.
Yeah.
There was to my knowledge, there was never a front-wheel drive Fiat Abarth in the 60s. There might have been one now, but there wasn't it.
Here's the thing as well, because when I used to go to, and this will date me, the Coits Historic at Silverstone. Whenever I saw an Abarth, it always had because the heat, it always had the back of the thing off. Yeah,
quite right.
That wasn't just a modern. That was how it was raced, was it?
They were all raced like that, and for good measure, because it served a double purpose. The purpose, obviously, was. The initial purpose was to cool the engine or keep the engine cool as best as you possibly can. But the other thing was it was to actually get downforce.
So it's an early wing, basically.
Exactly. It acted as a spoiler, you see, at the rear.
All right. Okay. So no, I did, because I was wondering about that when I saw it. So Radbourne comes about then because you think, okay,
Yes.
we can do this for other people as well because we're doing so well with.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we were, at that particular stage, we were just a bunch of amateurs.
Yeah.
It was only later that we had to do it professionally. But yeah, it was, we had to do a lot.
And of course, this is at a time when, because now everything comes in as standard as a car. But back in the day, you were getting your steering wheels from, or your racing wheels from 100 plus in France. You were importing bits from all over. So there were very few people who actually put it all together in a sort of, who knew that what they were doing sort of package. I mean, you talk about sports exhausts, or special kind of sports of plugs coming in from various places.
Well, the thing was that you had to have the latest component to go quicker.
Yeah.
And you started off, let's say, with the basics, as I said previously, and then built it up from there. But certainly, when I came back from Italy, from college, I came back with a suitcase full of parts, full of camshafts and carburetors. Yeah. I mean,
you would you would sidle up to sort of Jerry Marshall and say, "Psst, want to buy a carburetor?" or something like that.
Yes. Well, it was almost like that, actually. It was almost that. I mean, I'd sidle up to Jerry Marshall because he was a good mate.
Right.
But of course he could never get in the car.
Of course not.
That he couldn't do.
The thought Jerry Marshall was a larger than life character in all ways, especially physique, and the thought of him to squeeze into an Abarth. I mean, Barry Williams
Impossible.
maybe, but yeah, indeed.
Yes, absolutely. And they actually stayed with me through the Renault period as well. I had both Jeremy Marshall and Barry Williams in the Renaults later on.
So why did you decide that there was time to put this all down in a book? Because, I mean, obviously, did it sort of become, did motorsport become too prohibitive? I mean, I'm just thinking of people like sort of Demon Tweaks, they sort of continued, didn't they? They still sort of continued their bits and pieces.
Yes.
But what was the sort of like, if you like, the arc with the peak was the late 60s, early 70s, and then you decided it was getting far too professional? How did it work out?
The 80s was also big. And the manufacturers came in the 80s, really. Yeah. Again, one of the problems I had with Fiat was that they actually didn't come in.
Right.
And they stayed out. They didn't come in and back us. And we couldn't afford to do it. We couldn't afford to be competitive in international races unless we had, some form of supply sponsorship, really. And we got that. And we got that with partly with Abarth to start off with. Yeah. But it mainly came along with Renault.
Which is an interesting, wasn't it? Because you were thought, but then again, Enzo Ferrari always called us garagistas, didn't he? Those little guys.
Yes, he did. That's right,
so if it's not coming out of Torino or Maranello, they don't really want to know, do they?
No, that's right. That's absolutely true.
when it comes to, I mean, did you keep, presumably, I mean, you've got records because you're writing. I mean, I know it's the 60s and 70s, but even then you had to keep records. So that was presumably you used those to put the book together, to put Abarth, Radbourne Racing and me together?
I managed to do the book from, I can honestly say that I did the book with my friend Steve Hole. Yeah. And we both wrote this book, if you like. But lots of people asked me to write a book for a long time, and I just thought it wasn't me. I didn't think I in any way was capable of doing it. That was really, and it was to a certain extent it was a wonderful publicist, Fiona McMurray, who got me to write the book, if you like. And it was only when I started that I realized the stories that we had. They happen. Probably something that your listeners might be able to liaise with is that, like, say, Goodwood. Yeah. When the Goodwood revival started. Yeah. In 98. Yeah. I was on the grid of that first race.
What was that like?
And it was amazing because it was a handicap. It was a handicap race. It was the only time that Goodwood had run a handicap race. And what is a handicap race? A handicap race is a race which the cars are set off at intervals, one at a time, based on their practice laps.
Yeah.
And the idea is that the timekeepers would then be able to get them all to cross the line together.
Yes.
And that was fun. And when I look at the results sheet that I've got proudly displayed on the wall,
yes,
I'm in my race with me is Sterling Moss, Jack Brabham, Bob Bondurant, Carroll Shelby. Carry on. And all these people are in the same race as little me. And that meant that we all were sharing the same, I call it a canteen because it was made out, the building was made,
the Naffy Hut
was a canteen. And all these people were together again. And it was a fantastic experience. So that really, it kind of I tried to explain to people what it was like. And one thing led to another. And of course, I was therefore putting it down on paper. Sooner or later, the book came about. Took 2 years.
I'm just thinking what it's like herring around the track, coming out to St. Mary's or the chicane, and then you look in the mirrors and you see Black Jack coming up behind you or Shelby. Yeah. And what goes through your mind apart from, I'm going to need more underwear at this point?
Yes. Absolutely. The marvelous thing about these people, by and large, is the vast majority of them have no ego. Yeah. Outside of the track. Yeah. On the track, they got an ego, of course. But they're really, really good. Great to be with. Always there, ready to help. I love chatting with Jack Brabham. I raced a Brabham. Yeah. Formula 2 Brabham that was owned and raced by Derek Bell. Yeah. And it was his car. And I absolutely adored racing that. And talking to Jack Brabham about it, and he was giving me tips. And that if you're a sports amateur and you're being given tips by the professional, it's something very special.
Constructors champion, world champion. Absolutely. In car.
Yes. Yeah.
Lincoln, I'm going to run out of time because I could talk to you this until probably next Friday. The book is called Abarth, Radbourne Racing and Me. Ladies and gentlemen, order it via our own virtual bookstore. Lincoln, it's been an absolute honour to speak to you today.
It's been a great honour to be here. Thank you so much.